I bring to you Mike Brown.
A friend of mine, Mia, tweeted this a few days ago. She didn't know it, but it provided the thread for me to hang this story on. So this is from Mia. It's a story in two parts about the value of being small and fickle. Part one on cycling, which is travelling small. I was 24, had just finished 6 years at university, had been laid, but barely. Had always known I wanted to do something different. I once told my dad, I don't want to look back and regret not doing something. He had tears in his eyes when I left. We worked our passage on a German container ship from Wellington to Tacoma, Washington State. We had May the 6th twice as we crossed the international date line. I was seasick both days. We swept floors, chipped rust and painted our way across the Pacific. We cycled from here on the Olympic Peninsula to Yorktown in Virginia. We rode close to 5,000 miles in 3.5 months, a roll call of states: Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Kansas, Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky. I remember them all still. Life becomes stripped down to the basics: the weather, where you sleep, what you eat, how you feel. You imagine you'll have deep insights into life, but they come later, if at all. The simplicity of movement becomes its own intoxication. The high point on the route is 11,500 feet, just below the height of Mount Cook. You're super fit and acclimatised by then, having cycled at altitude through the high country. By this stage you feel like you can cycle forever. Montana is called Big Sky Country. You feel closer to the sky there, the blueness, vast and close and sublime. We met people on the trip who had never seen the sea. I imagine the sky had the same feeling for them. The clean got me across Kansas. Kansas is flat with never-ending headwinds. If you can choose between hills and headwinds, always choose the hills. We each had a cassette player and allowed ourselves 10 tapes. Billy 2 and Anything Could Happen proved perfect Into the Wind music. I loved the feeling that it seemed an endless trip. The thing was not to think about finishing, about how far you still had to go. Just think of the moment, the day, the next hill, and revel in the countless days still lying ahead. You meet people along the way. Pete was an Englishman in Missouri. He and Phyllis waved their scarecrows at cyclists as they passed and invited them to stay the night. We stayed up until 5:30 a.m. drinking homebrew and listening to his travel stories. The journey and only the journey was the thing for him. By the end, though, you just wanted to finish. You were tired of giving the same answers to the same questions, tired of the headwinds just pushing through to Virginia. I remember at times barely talking to John, who had cycled the whole way with me. Still, the lure of the road and what's around the next bend has stayed with me to this day. At times, I've ached to recapture that. Part 2 on serendipity, or the importance of being fickle. In 1984, I saw a cycling magazine. The cover photo was of someone doing the bicentennial cycle route. I fell in love with the romance of such a trip, and over the next year and a half it became something I had to do. I talked my friend John into coming with me. In December 1985, John was in a Wellington cycle shop buying gear for the trip. In walked an American cycle tourist who was touring the country and in Wellington for a day or two. They talked. Dana gave John her number and said, "Drop by when you're in America," and so we did. Dana lived in Missoula, Montana, the home of Bicentennial. I fell into infatuation with her. I left her on July the 4th, cycling eastward, a day with new fallen snow on the surrounding hills. She gave me a woolen hat. She had gone to school in Maine. At the end of the trip, she gave us the number of a friend in Maine. We caught a Greyhound bus there. We stayed in Maine with Martha for some weeks. John left for London. I found some part-time work. I prepared to stay in the US through the winter. I spent the fall travelling back to Montana on a Greyhound where it didn't work out, and then back to Maine again in the first snowfalls of the year. I listened to the Red Sox lose the '86 World Series to the Yankees on the radio. I felt small and fickle, my money running out. I left in late November to London. I knew no one there aside from John. Found a flat at 21 Glenhurst Road, Brentford, with some people I didn't know. Some South African friends of theirs were staying on the floor. New Year's Eve 1986, we went to a pub on Gloucester Road. A friend of theirs, an American from Maine, met us there. I fell in love with Debbie in London. Our 20th wedding anniversary is in May. I look back and think a change 21 of those fickle moments would have meant us never meeting, would have meant me not being here now. My life has been defined by that cycling trip across America in so many ways. I said earlier that insights come later, if at all. My insight is this: travel light and trust the serendipity.